has everybody read the roadmap? I'm assuming everybody's read this roadmap already.
Mm. Yeah, and yeah, I'm sure that who's watching us has read the roadmap.
But
But if
maybe
you haven't,
you can just go through while you're doing that about just the
yeah,
basic idea of the roadmap and what that is.
right, right. So, I mean, the roadmap is the dev's opportunity to explain to the player base what the plans will be moving forward from here. Traditionally, the roadmap has been just a way for the devs to like just here's all of the places that we want to look at improving the game. Here are some ideas about what we want to do with that. And then it usually spans a long period of time. So it's like a big picture overview. It usually means that there's fuzzy around the details, right? Like it's not like patch notes where you have the all the details like written out there. Um, and we've been expecting this roadmap for a long time because the Steam release happened 2 months ago, or a little bit more than 2 months ago now, and everybody's wondering, like, now that the Steam release is done, and now that all the final things that are imminent that are going to be patched are probably going to be implemented in the next update, possibly one more update after that. Like it's like coming to a close, the wrapping up the release of Steam, the release on Steam, and the devs have to have that next project in mind. I mean, we know this as Worm players more than anybody else that if you don't have that next project lined up, then y- y- you can potentially lose the what's the word? Like the momentum, right? The momentum. And hey, Hashem, how's it going? Yeah.
How
So
you doing?
the roadmap, I think, is a way for the devs to not only communicate to the player base about their future plans, but also a way for them to put a target down onto paper about where they want to be in a year from now. And that's sort of like the time scale that we're looking at for a roadmap, like over the next year, what kinds of things are the devs
Ah,
sort of
in
going to
the
be
wrong
pointing their
spot.
direction on? Hey, ultimate savior.
Ultimate savior. Yeah. What I don't think you realize is that this is my or I said we wouldn't take, so this is my punishment.
Yeah. Right, this will be the last time we say, because but yeah, instead of calling it a punishment, I think we should call it a consequence.
It's my
Brian lost a bet.
consequence.
Yeah, Brian lost a bet, and this is his consequence for losing that bet. He has to wear the Snapchat filter
Is this a stone wall?
for this whole
Yes, it
thing.
is.
What? Yeah, this is a stone wall. Yeah, this used to be called what was it called? A small stone wall, or
Something else.
short a short stone wall, or something like that. And then at some point or another, they changed it to
Oh,
a stone wall.
need your help.
Oh, oh, okay. What is it? I hear it's a crab, and your helmet is shiny.
Not that shiny.
And so Cappy asks, don't
So,
roadmaps usually have general times to set to them, like quarter one, quarter two? Um, maybe. I mean, I think more than that, this roadmap definitely it was clear that the granular details of what's going to happen, exactly how it's going to happen, when it's going to happen, that stuff wasn't felt like it was the purpose. Yeah, it didn't feel to me that Samuel felt like that was the purpose of this roadmap, which is fair.
uh,
Like, yeah, go ahead.
yeah, on a small team like Smule has, there's no way to actually give timelines. Even I don't think he gave general timelines. And I mean that's okay. What more we would want to know is exactly what their thoughts are for the coming
Right.
whatever it is. I wish he gave like this is going to happen over the next year or something, or the next
And
4 months or 6 months. I don't know.
I would
But
argue that the in general, the roadmap gave us a partial glimpse into what their ideas are, but it didn't give us a full glimpse, right? Like we still don't know a lot of things that the devs are thinking right now, and that's something that I kind of want to. I think we'll go through as we go along in this discussion.
all right. So, I mean, in saying that,
Mm.
let me just make sure I don't have. That should all be light. Yeah, it's just annoying. Okay. Ah, yeah. Okay. Okay, everyone. We can stop talking about Brianna and focus on the roadmap. What was on the roadmap? Let's take a look. What we're gonna do is we're not going to read it. We're expecting that you guys have read the roadmap, but we're gonna look at it and analyze the paragraphs.
Mm. So you're gonna have to help me here because I'm gonna be watching
This
this on
was
my
not
phone.
part of the deal. Was not me saying sweetie and honey and darling or pushing my hair back. Like
What does it look like when you push your hair back? I'm curious to know.
everybody just
Like,
found
does your
out.
hair go flowing, or does it?
It
Yeah,
doesn't.
it just like glitches out. My
Just out of
immersion.
my face. Out of my face. Um, okay. Okay. Let's get back to what really matters here.
Yep,
The
yep. Serious
roadmap.
talk.
This
Right,
is a very serious talk.
right.
I look like a lady from your building, so you can now think every time you see that lady in your building that she plays Worm Online. All right. I'm gonna bring up the roadmap. Uh,
Okay.
Everybody else, you can bring up the roadmap. That's okay, Osbeck. Let's do the roadmap talk, and we're gonna go straight to the items. So we know a couple things. We already had a post from Samul that said what they were gonna do over the next, let's say, month or so, what they
Right,
plan to do in the interim. This was what they're going to do after that. So if you haven't read
right.
that post yet, you should definitely read that. It just has all the fixes that they're really planning on doing. The UI, like they plan on just touching the UI a bit and doing a bunch of stuff,
Yeah, the name of that
bug
post is
fixes and
on
on
things
things
current.
current.
Yeah. So that's the post outlining what they're doing right now.
And now here's the post about what they're going to do after that. Uh, Again, I'm not going to read this word per word. We're going to go straight to the heart of things because I feel
Right.
we're going to run out of time.
It's very possible. I mean, the intro I really liked. It was going through what was going on now, and they're they link the post to on things current for us, so that
I did
sort
not
of
do
was
this
helpful.
properly.
And they do have a paragraph saying, "I ask your patience in this part as it might take us a while to actually get to that point," right? Which is hiring new devs,
Yeah.
right? So that's big
So
news.
there's the first
Um,
thing. They're going to hire more devs, but
mm,
which is exciting. I'm assuming that they're programmers, since that's always been the bottleneck for Worm.
yeah,
I but also know, and I think he tries to say this in the post, that whenever you hire someone new, I mean, if anybody's ever had a job, you hire someone new, there's going to be a period of adjustment. That period is going to be a specific
mhm,
amount of time for the person to learn the worm system, learn the spaghetti code that's here, and
yeah,
then be able to come to a point where they're like, okay, I understand this enough to be able to actually contribute. And
right.
that's going to
That might take.
be time. It's going to take
Now,
time.
what one thing that they did mention in the post was that new hired devs are going to be on bug fixing duty for a while. Like and I think that's a great way of introducing them to the system. Like they have to go and look at how the system's supposed to work, and then they look at how the system actually works. but through the
right.
code, and then they have to fix those bugs. That's a great start for a person who's just learning the system.
Yeah, so expect we are not going to see some sort of miracle amount of work being done. I would say
And,
you won't even see any benefit until maybe the new year, sometime in the
and
new
hey,
year.
Taiki, who says, "Oh
Yes,
my God, you look
let's
gorgeous."
and yeah, and I'm assuming that was for you, but thank you
Right.
anyway. Uh, and yeah, don't you feel left out, Adam? No, not at all.
Nope.
Just a little bit.
I'm
No.
perfectly okay over here.
Okay, just checking.
Yeah.
Um, and okay, so we got that out of the way. It's great that we're gonna get more devs, and I can't wait until we start seeing the benefit of that. Now they do mention that they want to do further UI improvements. Um,
Hmm.
I don't believe he said what UI improvements.
What the heck?
Just that there are UI improvements coming. Uh, it would be great if they like the thing that I already showed on a previous stream
Yeah. We
was
clipped it
I'd
too, and
love
it's
to see uh, kind of like skinnier bezels around windows, borders
yes.
around
Yeah.
windows, like a theme like that, and
Mhm.
the ability to. I would love to be able to choose my own font, or for them to have a more modern font.
Modern font. Yeah, the
And
font is
so
quite dated.
we we have a font that's dated, which is okay, but if you're wanting to bring in more players, you got to have a more modern UI, which means a font that looks like it's not from an I don't know Windows Me or something. Now I know that they people would say that the font itself is allows for you to see more in a more condensed space,
Mm,
which is true. But that argument for UI design has long sailed past a few decades ago. We don't do
right.
that anymore, right?
Right. So
We
just to be
have. Go ahead.
I like just to be specific here, Ryan's like referring to the UI sort of philosophy of which way should we go to make it better for a universal application? Like people all around the world are going to interact with this UI. What's the best solution for like the human interface between us and the and even just a computer program? And if you were to gauge, like, you're weighing larger font and larger areas on the screen for each thing, but at the expense of you can't see as much. It turns out that the optimal solution, like the optimal place on that spectrum, is larger stuff. Like, this is why we see in the modern UI, like, if you look at all Google stuff, everything is large and taking up more space on the screen. And the reason is because research shows people engage with it in a far easier way.
Katz is saying Adam is
Sorry.
mansplaining Brianna's thoughts.
Yes, I'm just explaining it in a different way. Hopefully, I'm not coming off.
You're gonna make him feel guilty. Anyway, functionality versus
uh,
like the yeah the way. I mean, this is
right.
why people like Streamlabs OBS over OBS,
Hmm.
right? This is why our like Windows 10 looks like this. This is why uh, we have like if you use a Mac or you use a phone that we're not using a font that can squish so many things into a little space. And if you ever used an app that did that, that's tried to squish so much text into a small space, you would not use that app. And that's the problem that we have with Worm right now is that we've accepted that. Like, it's not for
Mm,
us. We've accepted this font. It's fine for us. It's just not what you want to see to give people the first time they log into this game. They're not going to accept it.
mm.
And it's something easy that they could do. Add a different font. Allow us to choose between a few different fonts. And then make this one that we have now compatible, but not the default.
Right.
Right? That's what you could do. I mean, it's just a font. You can use a different font, and then what I did in an earlier video, Adam, you said that you you
Clipped
clipped
it.
that piece and put it. Is that I actually created a concept in Photoshop on what it could look like if they just used a different font. Did nothing else but use a different font. The inventory window. The
Right.
inventory
And it
window
looked great.
looks exactly the same. I didn't add any really new functionality. I just changed the font, and yeah, it looked so much better just for that.
Right. Right. I agree completely. I don't know exactly how it's going to feel in game exactly, but I'm sure that there's some balance that can be struck between the size of the
Maybe I
font.
have to show it to everybody again because you're saying
Yeah. Yeah. Show it.
Des
Yeah. Yeah.
Deso font alone won't change much. So here's my
Right.
like I
Right.
it's hard to
Agreed.
think about it. So that's why I created a concept that looked exactly like it would look in the game. So let's see if I can find that. Because you have to choose. Do you want to be able to fit more on your screen, or do you want to have a more modern looking font? Worm could just have both. Worm could just allow you to choose both. The default should be the more modern looking UI. Right? That's what they were wanting to do back last year when they said we need to update the UI. That was a big complaint on the Steam for Worm Unlimited. I mean, this is what they did many years ago when they were thinking about doing the UI thing. They looked at the complaints they were getting on the reviews of Worm Unlimited and said one of the common themes was people saying, "Oh, the UI looks terrible. Looks like a
Hmm.
UI from so long ago."
Right.
They knew this was
Agreed.
a problem, so they decided let's work on it, and this was the result. We got a little
And
bit better UI, but they didn't change
yeah.
really the font look. And the problem now is that the problem now is that on on Steam, people are still gonna say the same thing. There's like the updated UI did not fix that problem of people saying, Worms UI still looks like it's lacking something. And then my
Right.
thing was just like, well, if you just changed a font and then let it fit, then all of a sudden you have a more modern UI. And that's
Right.
why.
Are you showing the new your
So this is
concept?
what I did for people that didn't see that part of the stream.
Hmm.
If I can get it to load.
Oh, okay.
Okay, here it
Still haven't
comes.
gotten there. I like this idea. I again, it's a matter of I'm not sure how functionally it'll be. Maybe I just have to try it. But I can imagine the first reaction people will have is I won't be able to see nearly as much stuff on my screen as I did before, and that might be something that people will complain about it. But maybe if they added the toggle that allows you to switch back and forth between the old font and the new font, that'll alleviate that problem. Because I can imagine for like
That's
things like
it.
pan filling. Yeah.
And
Things like
yeah, they can
pan
do all that
filling, yeah, I
stuff.
can
Yeah, McCoofer thing, also scaling column widths. Yeah, why not? Add that stuff. That's it. That's the exact same window we have right now,
mhm,
except a
exactly the
different
same
font.
window.
That's it. It's
Yeah.
got the same amount of information lengthwise. It's got the name, it's got the quality, it's got the same way that the functionality. It's still a list. The only
Mhm,
thing is that it's got a different font.
mhm.
That's it. I just used a
And
different font.
there's a little bit less stuff that can go into the window.
Yeah, they can compact it. They can make the background look different, right? They can add a line here, a line there. That's just basic UI. But essentially, the functionality here is exactly the same with a different font. That's it. And so that was the point of what I did here was just to like uh, showcase how a different font can affect how modern your UI looks.
Right. Dezo brings up the counter argument, and this is a valid counter argument, right? Worm has so much micromanagement. How are huge letters and constantly scrolling to get same items shown in a view going to help? And I totally sympathize with that counterpoint, which is why I, keep saying that I kind of have to feel like I kind of have to play with it and feel it just to see how it affects that aspect of this game,
So
you
Taiki
know.
Vetre, you want filters, and I was like, yeah, they could add filters, but they actually did. They just need to add more, and I wish that they
Right.
did it in a better, more modern way. But right here, I mean, why am I showing you on this? Let me get rid of.
Yeah.
So
Filters were a great addition. I am
right
using
here,
them
they
all
have
the time.
filters. They're just not. Yeah, they just did it in a way that tried to maximize space, and they're tiny little
Right.
icons, and they didn't add that many. Um, it would be
That's
cool if you
okay.
could add your own.
Okay. So
I
like
kind of
filter.
wish that they had filters at the top of the window, that would be what people are used to. Uh,
So you can save a button for like filter logs, for example, or something like that.
right. Filters for every single window would be cool. Yeah.
Hmm. Right. They did add BSBs, which was a great help. But I agree. You maybe make that toggleable as well,
Yeah.
where
And
you
Casper,
see the
you're right.
filters.
We already went through it. Having a bigger
What's that?
font, a slightly bigger font, will make
Mm.
Windows bigger. That is true.
Yeah. Oh
And you
yes,
have
yes,
to
yes.
balance that with the window sizes, trying to get like the windows thinner, the borders thinner, trying to
Yeah.
maximize the space better. Uh,
So I know what Katz is saying here. She's saying that before what we were saying was we want to make things smaller, right? Make it from when you're talking about going to higher resolutions, making that will make all the UI smaller. And then you combine that with making all of the text bigger. And
do you
she's
think it
saying,
would
how is
even
that?
out?
How did well, no, it's actually going in the same direction. It doesn't even out. It's like it makes all the UI smaller, which reduces the amount of space inside of the UI elements. And then it makes all the text bigger, which again reduces the space inside of the inventory, let's say, even more. And so what she's asking is how do you reconcile those two things when the
I don't
philosophy should
understand
be
because what you actually said. So I just made my UI smaller by making all of the UI
yeah,
like compress the UI, right? But by
right.
making a bigger font in the same amount of space in the window. So like I mean that's what we're actually wanting. I'm actually wanting to
Oh, I
increase the
see.
font
It does
size.
balance it out.
But
Yeah, it will balance
that's
it out.
not
You're
what
right.
Katz is talking about. She's talking about
Okay, what
that
is
if you
Kat saying?
put in a font that's wider, you're gonna
Yeah,
see less. You're gonna need
yeah.
you're gonna need
The window
the
to be
window
wider,
wider,
and that takes up more
right?
space on the screen.
Which is true. That is true. You need to find a font that looks more modern, that's not giant, but still can signify exactly what you want to see. There
Yeah.
are fonts out there like that. There
The
are
other thing
fonts
is
like we're having this argument, but Worm is one of the only games that doesn't do this. One of the only games. So it's
it
not
doesn't do what?
like Worm is that doesn't use a more modern font. Um,
Right.
there are other games. Like I'm not saying Worm's the only game, but I'm saying like the vast majority of games don't do this. What Worm does,
There's
but
another thing
but there's no reason
about
why
the
you
hold
can't
up.
have both fonts. There's no reason why you can't be able to choose both.
Yeah. There's another
You
thing
know,
about the UI font business and what's in there. It's what also makes the UI kind of ugly are the little boxes next to everything. That's another thing that is from UIs that are a relic right now. Like the last program that people would have used that had that system of opening up a nested nest of items was like it was some old Windows, like probably from 2000 or before that. And so I know that like the instant people come into this game, those are very clearly a glaring UI sore that people
I'm
see right
just
off of the
talking
bat.
about that
Windows 3.11.
people are using the font as as one of the things that they say looks makes the UI look old. So
Yeah.
why not add an option to have the font look uh, more more interesting? The
Like
way
how do you
that
like the font that like they put the title of each window where it says like inventory or the crafting window where it says crafting?
and if
How do you like that font?
I gave an example of what one could look like. I picked a font, one that's very similar to the font that they use for the title of these
Okay.
windows. And then I built it and people see it. And now when
And it
you
looks
look at
good.
it, you don't notice, yeah, you don't notice that uh, people think that it now, the inventory looks better. The
Mm.
inventory looks like it's a more modern. And yes, Robato's very skinny font, and within Worm, it looks dated, unfortunately. You can fit more. But you could have both fonts in the game as an option.
So crates, I don't think they need to have so many fonts. They just need to have a few options, I'd say. Um
Right. You
and
might
and we're
have
not what we're not saying here is that changing the font will make everything better and all problems will go away now. No, we are saying though that here is a thing that devs can do that would literally not take all that long. Like if you were to ask how much dev time would need to be allocated to allowing a new font, it would be a small, tiny project that would be done quickly. And here is where maybe that bang for buck sort of argument that you have, like, like you give a little chart that says if the devs can
yeah.
add something with
Personally,
very
I'd
little
want them
time
yeah. I'd
and has a
want them
high
to be able
impact.
to add themes. People can create their own theme, like
Okay.
their own UI. That would be the
Right.
most preferred method, but that would take a lot of
Right.
time. But
That'd
you're
take
right,
a lot of
Cats.
dev
They would
time.
have to use the font and they would have to apply it to all the different things in the game that would need it. I also
Right.
did, like, on that screenshot, I actually applied it to the chat, so I know what that looks like. I don't know if I can show it. I mean, there was a few things that I did in that screenshot. They would have to apply it to the crafting window. They'd have to apply it to the the trading window, and I mean, they've already applied it here. They don't have to add it to everything,
Mhm.
but they can add it to a lot of things. Like, for example, if I was looking at the tooltip, they wouldn't have to add it to the tooltip. There's certain things that they could add it to that would give a more modern feel to the UI. Uh,
Yeah.
if I were to talk about readability, because everybody's readability is a little different than everybody else's, uh, then what I would put into the game or into this conversation is that just open up a book and look at the font they use there. That was determined at some point the most readable font for books.
Mhm.
That's why they use it. Uh, Something similar to like Georgia or something like that.
And I don't think they ever put Roboto in books, do they?
Uh, yeah, there's studies, and I'm sure that you can look up which one's the most readable font. I don't know. I mean, you've got to think about the different cultures looking at these fonts, like different people within those cultures looking at the font. It'd be really hard to distinguish what's the best font and what's not the best font. Some people like reading more cursive type of fonts.
Right, me
Some
too.
people
I
don't.
personally like reading more cursive fonts. I like the ones that have the little tails and the
Yeah,
squigglies,
whatever.
like, personally. I
You
find
could they
those more
could
readable.
find a font that looks more like Roboto, that's a little bit more modern. It would take up a little more space. Anyway, who can like Georgia, Cappy? All I said was
It's
look in books. That's the type of font in books. Nobody actually likes Georgia. No, that's the wrong thing to say.
nobody likes Roboto either. It's like in the same sort of category. It's not
Roboto
about whether
actually
you
looks
like it.
really nice. Certain
It
Roboto fonts.
it reminds me of Arial,
Oh, Cappy.
like just the straight and
Roboto
blocky.
actually looks nice. They have different types of Roboto. The thin one looks really nice in some settings.
Right. This is why they should have options, Serene. Like,
Yeah,
people
all
have
we're saying
preferences, right?
is
Some
that
people
make
don't.
give us the best chance to get players in here and keep different
Windows.
fonts. I would almost argue they should add 4, 5, 6 fonts, different kinds of
Yep.
fonts to the UI. That would be the most preferred. I just created an example for a font, and it turned out pretty good. So that was it. Anyway,
Yeah. And
roadmap.
again, the problem. Well, just to conclude this, the problem that we're trying to solve here is when somebody first opens up the game and the first thing that they see doesn't give them a negative reaction, such as the way that the text looks like in this game, especially in the inventory. I know for a fact there's so many people who look at that and say, "Wow, that looks just a little bit too intense for me," and turn it off because I know for a fact because I've seen people do that. I've showed this game to lots of friends, and every one of them comments on how intimidating the inventory window looks. And I think what they mean by that is it is just very busy with a lot of like those little boxes with pluses and tons of text with tiny little icons, and it just looks it's like the first thing that sends that red flag in their head. And I've even had some friends say so far as just because of the way the inventory looks, I can't play this game. Right? But then
That's
you
just
look at
one
another game
example.
like right, but then you look at another game like Skyrim that has the same kind of inventory layout in the sense that they have items and then they have columns that give you stats about those items. Like nobody says anything about that
Those
inventory
same
system.
people can
Can play those ones.
and don't comment at all.
Don't comment at all. Don't even look at it about it at twice. They think this is just perfectly fine, right?
But
And there's
so,
something different about
why?
Worm.
And you just, I don't know, UI, UX, all these things play in their minds. That's it. All we're saying, there are things they can do
Hmm.
to give Worm the best chance.
Yep. Okay, so Kat's saying the only reason I'm pushing back on Brianna's font wishes is because I was helping out with the UI before the Steam launch. I know from practice that there is already a struggle to fit the font with Roboto. If it was a wider font, it would be even worse. Originally, I wanted to use Palantino for more things, but it didn't fit without using considerably smaller size of font. Okay, so
But isn't that the
that
problem?
that's telling me that the devs were really concerned with size of things. But that also contradicts the design choice of putting such a wide border around all the inventory.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean,
couldn't
when
you
you're
get
talking about
some
font versus the the way they decided to go about uh, displaying the
getting the
window
size,
information to us. And what we ended up getting was more of a skin, right? We
a
ended up getting a
reskin?
skin of the old window, not a
Imagine.
imagining of our UI and how it could work. Uh, does this game need a reimagining on how things work to make it more modern and to fit a more uh, some sort of system that feels more natural to people? Probably.
I don't think the
I don't think we're
reimagining
gonna
needs to
get
be
it,
that drastic. It doesn't need to be drastic. It just needs to be like you
there
have
are
to
windows that
imagine
need
a
updates.
slightly
There
different way.
are, uh, they probably need to throw out a lot of things the way that it works and redo things. That would be the best option, sure.